Hello, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome um, to this very interesting conversation that we are going to have for the next hour or so. On the 22nd of April, 2025, a tragic terrorist attack occurred in the Baisaran Valley near Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir, India, resulting in the deaths of 26 civilians and injuries to at least 20 others. The assailants targeted tourists, primarily Hindus, but also included a Christian tourist and a local Muslim pony ride operator amongst the victims. The attackers, armed, infiltrated the tourist area and reportedly segregated victims based on their religion before opening fire. This incident is considered the deadliest attack on civilians in India since the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks. In response, the Indian government launched Operation Sindoor, targeting terrorist camps in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The operation involved precision strikes and was part of a broader strategy to combat cross-border terrorism. We are very happy today to have with us Mr. Raja Muneeb. Mr. Muneeb is a freelance columnist and political analyst from Kashmir, India, known for his extensive commentary on geopolitics, national security, and socio-political dynamics of J&K. He contributes to several prominent media outlets like the First Post, Chanakya Forum, and the New India. Mr. Muneeb's writing often delve into information warfare, narrative building, and regional geopolitics. Mr. Muneeb, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure and an honor. Let's start with the very basic question first. In your assessment, what are some of the key elements that stand out in Operation Sindoor in terms of execution, geopolitical messaging, the scale, and the impact? Please share with us your insights.
Thank you so much for having me on your program. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure for me to be on this platform. So I'll begin by saying that this is a paradigm shift when it comes to India's response towards terrorism. And let me explain why it is a paradigm shift. We have seen in 2016, we carried out surgical strikes when Uri terror attack happened. We crossed over to PoJK and destroyed some of the launching pads and some of the terrorist camps there. 2019, after Pulwama, we saw Balakot attack, which happened on a standalone Jaish-e-Mohammed facility. Also, a facility which was not in the middle of a city of Pakistan, but you can say on the outskirts region of Pakistan, which was a standalone building with no nearby villages or local population. But never ever we have ever hit the center of the terrorism in Pakistan. We have never ever targeted the headquarters of Pakistan terror organizations like Jaish-e-Mohammed or, for that matter, Lashkar-e-Taiba. Which is, literally in Bahawalpur or in Murid, which is near Lahore, one is near Punjab of Pakistan. So these are heart of Pakistan. And also the multiple strikes which we carried out, precision strikes where we targeted about 9 terror facilities all across Pakistan, across the length and breadth of Pakistan. So it was a very, very strong and a very similar message given to Pakistan that India is not willing to, take terrorism from Pakistan anymore in an isolated theater, but rather than it is ready to increase the punitive cost on Pakistan and matters the most. So these strikes have not only struck some fear in the hearts and minds of the terrorists, but it has also displayed to the people of Pakistan the vulnerabilities they have now because of the state of Pakistan being a perpetrator of terrorism in Pakistan. So I think it's a very, very significant event. I would call it a very significant counter event which has happened. This Indian government has shown its intention. Also, I think the messaging is very, very clear in this. Most of these terror outlets in Pakistan thought they're untouchable. If you look at the facility in Bahawalpur, which was being, redone to accommodate more terrorists, and they were also building a swimming pool, that gives you a mindset of terrorists saying that they felt absolutely secure inside Pakistan. And they never thought that they're going to get, somebody's going to touch them with their facilities and their infrastructure in Pakistan. So I think that is something which now the terrorists in Pakistan will be thinking that they are not safe within Pakistan. So I think that is a very, very significant one. And obviously, then the psychological impact of it is something we can talk about as well. Because the moment these places were stuck, you could see the fear in the general public of Pakistan, where they thought that, all hell has broken loose upon them. Pakistanis have always thought that they're pretty safe from these events inside Pakistan, especially in Punjab, Lahore, and Karachi, the main cities. They do face incident attacks from Baloch and from KPK, but from Indian borders, they have not seen this kind of migration since 1971. Even during Kargil war, the theater was only limited towards the LOC. So this is first time after 1971 we actually went and we breached that LOC part and we actually stuck Pakistan in its heart. So I think it's very very significant on that term as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rajaji, for that amazing analysis. My next question is obviously Prime Minister Modi's statements. Now, he made three things very clear. One is that there will be no distinction between the terrorism and terrorists and the Pakistani army. Second is no nuclear blackmail. And third is any terror attack henceforth will be taken as an act of war. So he was very, very clear, complete clarity he gave to the nation, and it was a message to the world as well. So how do you see this particular messaging coming from India in terms of security and a diplomatic approach? I mean, how have we shifted from where we used to be literally before the 6th of May and after, let's say, the 10th or the 11th of May?
So, in terms of diplomacy, if we talk about, we know that we have been acting tough with Pakistan since Narendra Modi government has been in power. We have a very categorical stand that terror and talks cannot go together. But then I think we have just upped the ante and taken it to the extreme level of being with Pakistan. We have realized that the problem with Pakistan is not its terror infrastructure, but its military, which has been using terrorism as a state policy. And this is the only country which uses terrorism as a state policy. So I think finally the president has got its view. We have actually realized where the problem emanates from, and that is the Pakistani military. And the warning is very, very clear that this next time there is no distinguishing happening between the terrorism or the people who are backing that terrorism, which actually means the Pakistani military. They just became legitimate targets for us in case Pakistan again does some misadventure. Also, what is more significant, Urmi, in this one is the Indus Water Treaty, the way India has gone ahead and suspended India, IWT. Now, that is something which is going to hurt Pakistan a lot. And among its entirety from 1960 till now, despite two wars, despite Kargil, despite Uri, despite Balakot, IWT is something which always survived this. So this tells you the intent of Indian government to deal with Pakistan and the seriousness of the Indian government to make sure that terrorism has a cost that Pakistan needs to pay. I think we have raised the cost of terrorism on Pakistan to that level where now it will be very difficult for them to perpetrate terror into India or into Jammu and Kashmir. Saying that, I don't say that they are not going to do it anymore, but it's just that now they know what the cost they are going to pay is about 10 to 15 times more than what they were paying before this. So I think that is a very significant escalation from our part as well.
Absolutely. I think I completely agree with that. I don't think India has ever taken a stand like this in the past. So I just would like to shift a little bit from this and just would like to ask you about the timing, because two things happened around when the terrorist attack took place. One was General Muneeb's infamous comment about the two-nation theory, which came, I think, just days prior. And second was US President Vance's visit to India. So it kind of coincided with two very critical events. So do you see this as a strategic or symbolic intent behind this? How do you see this?
No, the intent was very strategic for me because if you look at the intent, there were two major messaging into it. One was that not only JD Vance was in India, He was scheduled to leave the same afternoon back to US, but Prime Minister Modi was in Saudi Arabia. And the timing of the attack was such that, the Pakistani calculation was that this will trigger a backlash in India. And there could be riots in India, communal riots could be triggered into India. That is what they wanted to do on the first thing. So that would have been very embarrassing for us on the Saudi front as well, because we know that we enjoy a very good relationship with Saudi Arabia and UAE as far as Americans as well. So the one was to tell the Americans that, look, on Jammu and Kashmir, we are not going to follow the diktat the Saudis and the Americans have given them, which is of, finding lasting peace with India. But on the other way, they wanted to create this problem. Second is for their own internal messaging at a time when Pakistan is grappling with its own security failure. And we have seen so much of, fracturing happening ethnically within Pakistan and politically within Pakistan. Asim Munir thought that this is a good rallying point to create, a rallying force within Pakistan and get them back, rallying the military, which has lost its credibility and its complete legitimacy in Pakistan after Munir has taken over. So I think that is something which has happened, and these were the two calculations they were trying to make. But the most sinister one was of triggering a communal riot within India by carrying out such brazen attacks, and also to damage the relationship India has with America or India has with Saudi Arabia and UAE or the Muslim world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the other thing that I wanted to ask you and probably get your opinion on is, I mean, that's a whole subject by itself, which is the Western narrative. While, I mean, immediately in the aftermath of the attacks, there were all kinds of, propagandas and all kinds of things that were, but slowly and gradually, I think the world came to terms, and some of the Western publications and news outlets did put out, I wouldn't say pro-India and the truth, I would say, but it was a little bit more balanced than what it was a few days prior, like the New York Times and Washington Post. Uh, but they clearly did not acknowledge the fact that what triggered this retaliation by India was actually Pakistan's terror infrastructure. I mean, that's where this whole thing started. And even President Trump's recent comment by equating and putting India and Pakistan in the same sentence, in the same equating the two nations as being equal. So how should one look at this whole Western narrative in terms of how the messaging is, both with the media and the political establishments?
So Western media, by and large, has always been anti-India. We have seen provocative statements coming from New York Times, was to name the media, and it is there from France 24, from European media to this, American media to British media, whether it is BBC, CNN, France 24. They all have been very critical of India and very anti-India for a very long time. I think what happened this time is they got forced into fact-checking Pakistan because the satellite imagery which started coming up and the damage of the videos which started coming into Pakistan. From Pakistan itself, the people of Pakistan, the way they started putting up on social media, the damage which has happened inside Pakistan actually forced them to corner Pakistan's lies and Pakistan's narrative. So I think that is a very, a welcome shift. I would call it a welcome shift from Western perspective, that they wanted to play a kind of a neutral role into it. Though they did have their biases towards India, but they wanted to, minimize those biases and show a very fair picture when it came to India and Pakistan. Now, with Trump's statement, I actually do. I'm not surprised the kind of statements he has made, because since Donald Trump has come into power, if you see, he has tried to be a role of a peacemaker all around the role, whether it is Ukraine, Russia, whether it is Israel fighting the Hamas in Gaza or the Iranian issue. He's trying to be somebody who's trying to force his peace upon everybody, and he thought he's a chance with India and Pakistan as well, and he went ahead with the same kind of statements he's tried to make with Russia and with Ukraine as well. We know the result of Russia-Ukraine, the peace in held for 2 hours. But I think he just, it's more about taking credit and re-establishing that peace. Uh, the peacemaker role America envisions itself to make, because Americans for themselves have been caught into this war happening all across the world for a very long time, and they have been, so they want to reverse that image of theirs and want to be look more like a peacemaker in the regions. I think that is where Donald Trump's statement came from. So his equating India with Pakistan also stems from his from maybe a pressure he wants to build to have a favorable trade deal. Because if you look at Trump, his whole emphasis is on getting very lucrative trade deals from all across the globe. And he's been using all his, you can call geopolitical heads for creating a very favorable deal for Americans. So I think that thought also stems from there, that we might be looking to pressurize India into, entering into a very favorable trade deal for the Americans as well. So that is how I see Donald Trump's statement. But the response from the Indian government is very, very, firm. And that is something the Americans would not have liked, because if you look at the way the Pakistanis have been acknowledging the Americans day in and day out for their role, but our government here, Indian government, has absolutely, refused to mention American name or even mention Donald Trump into this whole affair. We are maintaining that the Pakistanis came and they are the ones who, literally asked for peace. So I think we have to see how this plays on this front. But India is very, very clear. Kashmir is not going to get internationalized, contrary to what Pakistan or the Americans are thinking. We have a stance, and we'll be following that stance very, very, carefully in future as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think our external affairs minister, I think just yesterday or day before yesterday, again, I think reiterated whatever the stand of the Indian government is, that India has always said that issues with Pakistan is a strictly bilateral issue. So even though President Trump did offer to mediate, I don't think that is something that will be entertained by New Delhi. I don't really see that happen. Funny that you mentioned the FT, the trade agreement. That, I mean, a lot of people actually right now think that the relationship between the United States and India, as it's at probably one of the best that it has been in the last few decades. A lot of people seem to have that, at least had that perception before this thing happened. So in terms of the trade deal between India and the United States, do you think right now, whatever has happened, but still, I am talking about strictly, let's say, military trade deals. I mean, the other things are different, but is it, do you think that it is going to be a little bit difficult for India to justify to get into a military trade deal with the United States, considering that for future conflicts, God forbid it doesn't happen, but for future conflicts, US will have the power to have a kill switch. I mean, that's what everybody is fearing, that, if we get the F-35s or any other military equipment from the United States for future conflicts, if the United States does not agree with India, they can influence. So do you think that is something that can impact the trade agreement between India and US now? Do you think the dynamics have changed, or do you think it's people are overreacting?
See, I think there is a bit of overreaction, because all these things work in a shade of gray. There's no black and white in these things. India is one of the largest exporter of military hardware to America, to US as well. Don't forget that as well. So we have a relationship with US which is based on mutual understanding. Now, we are not allies of US, but we are looking at mutual interest and mutual understanding. But saying that, there is a huge sentiment which says that buying American equipment comes at a cost, and that is, the cost is American interference with it. And I think Indian government is going to be very, very wary of this kind of an interference. Americans, if they want to have a good relationship with India, they will also have to recognize that American interference cannot be a part of a good business deal with India. So I think it's going to be a bit hard for India, for Americans or American companies to convince India to buy their hardware, at a time when Americans are, not exactly hedging their bets the way India expects them to hedge their bets. So it is going to be a point of contention, but how things turn out in next 1 year, we really don't know. What we are seeing right now is a lot of fluid situation between India and Pakistan. This is not even a ceasefire; it's a halt between between hostilities, which has been made very clear by us. But yes, you always run a risk with American hardware at 100%. Uh, how it is going to pan out, I'm not very sure. Because look, you cannot just keep on boycotting the whole world if they don't agree to you. Diplomacy doesn't work that way. Diplomacy is work, is basically art of making possible what the impossible is. So I think I'll leave that to the wisdom of the government to decide how they want to, go ahead with the Americans. But at the moment, yes, the sentiment is overwhelmingly anti-American because people are disappointed, especially with Donald Trump, because we saw what Joe Biden, his stance on India was. But people expected with Donald Trump back in power, Indians expected far smoother relationship with the United States and a far, a better tie between India and a better understanding between India and US. Unfortunately, Trump's, you can say, extrovertism is not something that is being that's on display, and he's making statements which now the American companies are also, trying to side off from. So let's see how it shapes up. But yes, it's something which the Indians will be we on our end will be heavily contemplating on how to go ahead with Americans on military trade deal when it comes to it.
So, Modi ji's statement that he made, one line I think struck out where he said, terror and trade cannot go together. Now, a lot of people saw the fine print there. We don't really do much trade with Pakistan. So, do you think this particular messaging was intended for the broader international community that, if you are supporting terrorism, and especially terrorism that specifically targets India, India will be in a difficult situation to, get into a trade deal with you. Do you think that that's what he was trying to, send the message across?
That has been PM Modi's stance since 2016 after Uri attacks happened. The trade and dialogue cannot happen. And we keep on maintaining that. And that messaging is entirely for the West who are advocating peace talks between India and Pakistan. Also, Americans who are saying that we would like to, play a role of mediators between talks. So, as far as PM Modi is concerned, he's very, very clear that unless and until all hostilities are not stopped from the Pakistani end, or the factory of terrorism is not dismantled in Pakistan, and they don't hand over people who have perpetrated terror in India, I don't think we are going to have talks with Pakistan. So his stance is very clear to the international community and to the Pakistanis as well. And also to those who within India, a constituency who advocates for Indo-Pak dialogue or Indo-Pak relations better. I think he's been very, very clear on that.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I thought. So, talking about the international community, let's talk about a little bit about the IMF bailout to Pakistan. So, apparently, it has bailed Pakistan out 24 times since 1958, often without real reforms. So, we all really know that there have not really been any real reform to improve governance. So India has criticized this move that it sends a very dangerous message globally. So do you think that the Western nations, and also in February, if I remember correctly, if I'm not mistaken, President Trump also announced a big aid. I mean, he of course said it's for the maintenance of the F-16s, and it is not for, but the optics are not really very good when you're giving that much amount of money to Pakistan, for especially for to improve their military infrastructure. So do you think that does this suggest that the Western nations still don't take India's security concerns seriously, or what's your take on that?
It was $380 million worth of aid which was given to America, to the Pakistanis for the upkeep of F-16. See, the American aid is not solely against India or to keep Pakistan alive. You have to understand the American geopolitical interest in that region as well, especially at a time when Chinese have firmly taken over Gwadar. America is extremely worried about Chinese presence in the Arabian Sea. To counter that, they want to keep that influence still alive in Pakistan, where they could, meet their strategic objectives. And part of that aid, military aid to Pakistan, was coming from a calculation of more American interest than something which should really bother India, or which was anti-India. But with Pakistan, the problem is that any aid or any money which goes to Pakistan runs the risk of that money to be directed towards terrorism and towards India. Now, even from this $1 billion, you saw the moment they gave them the loan of $1 billion, the new tranche. The Pakistanis have given 14 crore rupees to Jackie Mohammed Chief for losing 14 members of his family. Of course, Pakistan's economy is in shambles. They don't have the kind of money to spend. They have a loan of about $130 billion, which they have to pay off. Their foreign reserves are less than $9 billion. They have critical shortage of food and other critical supplies in Pakistan. They don't have fuel in Pakistan. So the country is, basically collapsing its own economic weight since they're under its own, mismanagement of economic weight. At the time, IMF giving them loan is something which India should be bothered about because time and again it has been proven that every time Pakistan has been provided with some kind of international aid, uh, Pakistan has perpetrated terrorism in India, whether it is a low-grade terrorism, whether it is in confines of Jammu and Kashmir, or whether it is in other parts of India, in mainland India, like one we saw in 2008 in Mumbai. I think what we really need to get the world moving on is getting Pakistan back on FATF list because that is something which is going to cut the complete aid from IMF. We have enough proof to, link Pakistan with terror organizations. It has happened in the past, and I think that is where we need to concentrate. We need to get Pakistan back onto the grey list of, or at least get Pakistan blacklisted on FATF. And also, I think India really needs to work with the Western powers on denuclearization of Pakistan. Pakistan is a country which is very rogue, and a rogue country like Pakistan having nuclear weapons is very, very difficult. So, denuclearing is another, I think, objective which India should pursue with the Western world very, I would say, robustly.
Thank you so much, Radhaji. Right, I'll come back to Operation Sindoor right now. So I think it has sent shockwaves around the world. Not just the operation, but the precision with which it was planned. So we hit 9 terror camps, and then we hit about 10 or 11 military establishments. So altogether, we probably have hit 20 within both within POK, Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and within Pakistan. So in terms of our indigenous weapons, that is also something, I mean, we even thwarted all the Chinese, the Americans. They may or may not agree to admit or agree to this, but we all know that that's something, the circular that came out by the government of India, it clearly mentions the details about this operation and Operation Sindoor. So all our missiles from the S-400s to the BrahMos to the Akash Tirs have done phenomenally. So do you think India's emergence as a new military power, I mean, as far as the world was concerned, so far, India was just a rising economic power, a cultural powerhouse, but no one really expected India to be a military powerhouse. So do you think that shift has happened, or do you think that that we are still some way down the road?
No, I think that shift has happened. It's a significant shift, to be honest, because India has established itself in the realms of being a really, powerful military infrastructure, especially the way we have struck them at 2022 different locations. And there's a much hype which is given to the Chinese technology and the Chinese weapons, and the Americans always talk about how lethal the Chinese are. But this, limited skirmish proved that the Chinese weapons were very ineffective in countering the kind of technology and the weapons India had produced domestically, which is like indigenous weapons of India. So I think the best success story that is coming out of India is its military prowess and its, I could say the leap India has made into being a military power in the world. I mean, its equipment has been tested and it has proved to be 100% accurate and 100% lethal. So I think it's a brilliant, beautiful story out of India, which is coming out of its military powers. Definitely, yes.
So do you think this might deter some of the Western nations a little bit? Would they be more, for the lack of a better word, more cautious of us going henceforth? Or do you think, it won't? What kind of impact do you think it'll have as far as the West is concerned when dealing with India?
Well, honestly, they're not going to be happy about it, to be honest, because you just
Also,
added a competitor to the list. So India has become a very serious competitor to that. So it's going to be caution. It's not going to be friendly for sure. It's going to be one of that of a competitor. And that is why you saw all those stories in American press coming about Rafale being down. They wanted to downplay the Rafales from the French, right? So you will see these things happening. Yes, not a friendly one, definitely.
yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and watch how that plays out. Coming back to the economics. So India is, of course, one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and Jammu and Kashmir has also seen significant progress. Over 3.5 million tourists last year. 3 billion dollars worth of investments. So even the assembly elections saw a 64% voter turnout, which is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So in the light of this terrible, absolutely terrible incident, do you think it could affect the region's momentum, stability, growth, and in turn India's? And if so, how do you think it might impact?
In short term, yes, but not in long term. See, that is one of another intent the Pakistanis have, because after abrogation of Article 370, the kind of peace and progress and development Kashmir has seen, then honestly, they have not seen something like this in last 70 years. And once the stakes in peace became very high, the recruitment for terror in Kashmir became very low. From hundreds, it just came down to single digits. And that is something which was bothering Pakistanis as well. So their intent was to disrupt this pace of development and this pace of peace in Kashmir. So it will take a temporary short-term hit, but I don't think it's going to have a significant effect because the alignment of Indian government and Indian people is in sync with people of Kashmir, and the kind of reaction which are coming from the valley have made it absolutely clear that where the Kashmiris want to hedge their bets to, and that is towards peace and towards the national integrity of the country, and also national integration towards the country. So I think Pakistan will not be able to be successful in the plan they wanted to isolate Kashmir from the rest of India. I don't think that is going to happen. I think Kashmir is going to get back to its feet very quickly.
Yeah, we can all really, really hope for that. And do you think that any particular what could from the local administration to New Delhi, what do you think actions or what can the government of India do from a local level to a national level to make sure that the momentum that Jammu and Kashmir has seen in the last probably couple of years, it continues?
So, I mean, there is always things to learn. So, the security grid is further being tightened in the valley. And, we have seen two encounters happening in valley in last 48 hours, elimination of 6 Pakistani fighters. But apart from that, the sync between the central government and the UT government, Umar Abdullah-led UT government is pretty good. There is no disruption of any developmental works. There is no disruption of any other, kind of work which is happening in the valley. So I think the pace has not been deterred as such. And I don't see that any significant changes are going to happen on the ground vis-a-vis the approach of central government towards development and peace on the valley. So that is not happening. But yes, there are things to learn from the incident. I think the security grid is further being tightened. We are actively pursuing terrorists who are in Jammu and Kashmir still alive or moving around. So all those things are happening. But on the governmental front, I believe that things are running seamlessly on both ends. There is no disruption of any sort happening on the ground.
Right. That's very reassuring to know. Well, we have spoken about the West. Now that is one part of the international community. Now the other is this particular operation in terms of China, Russia, and the Quad. So the Quad relationship, first question is, do you think that the Quad relationship is going to get a little bit more complex right now? with considering the relationship where India and the United States they are right now. And when it comes to Russia, has a separate kind of dealing with China. And China is supporting Pakistan. So this whole dynamics, this whole geopolitical dynamics, how do you think we've spoken about the West, but how do you think in Asia, Russia, China, Quad, Pakistan, all these dynamics is going to play out moving forward with respect to India and Operation Sindoor, of course?
There was a lot of lip service which was happening all around. If you look at the American, messaging, the lip service was these two are going to sort it out among themselves. There's nothing we can do. JD once made that statement pretty clear. But on the Chinese side, also apart from lip service, the Chinese have not shown any overt signs of helping Pakistan or standing with Pakistan, apart from the military dependency which Pakistanis have on the Chinese, which have been built over the years since Americans, stopped giving Pakistan the kind of weaponry they were giving them in the 80s. I think the Chinese have also been very, very careful of their messaging towards India and Pakistan. The Chinese have overtly not come out and supported Pakistan when it came to this skirmish which was happening between them. They have also been giving signs of more being a peacemaker, or trying to say that peace is essential between the two countries. So there is a lot of lip service which happened. Same thing happened with Russia as well. But Russians have, we all know that Russia has a very, very strong relationship when it comes to India, and Russia firmly backs India in terms of South Asian politics or South Asian geopolitics. Going by Quad, I think there is a lot of complexity between the relationship when it comes to India, US, Australia, or New Zealand relationship. I don't think Quad is something which is a smooth sailing. It's something which is very, very complex. And also, you have to understand how India is trying to develop its relationship. It's no friend of foes happening anywhere in the world. It's more of mutual benefit, strategic benefit, mutual cooperation. But at the same time, there is a mutual competition happening in a lot of places as well. So this is a new reality which is dawning upon the globe, and I think India is trying to navigate these waters with extreme caution, but at the same time with extreme optimism as well. So relationship with Quad, wherever I think the strategic interests are aligning, we will be going ahead. But wherever there is competition, we'll also be wary of that and trying to do our own things in that case as well. It's not going to be, you know, you're not in for all and nothing for all. It's going to be very strategic and very transactional based, I would say. It's going to be a transactional relationship. That's how I see it.
Right. Now, the other nation apart from China, which we keep hearing in the media and we keep reading about, is Turkey. Now, the situation about Turkey, which makes it a little bit more complicated, is because it's part of NATO. So I mean, obviously, I mean, and any kind of military, engagement with any NATO country, it is they are legally bound to. So that makes that particular situation. So India has taken some steps. India has reacted to Turkey's open support for Pakistan, Turkey and Azerbaijan, actually. And that also includes, Armenia. I recently saw in the news that India is thinking about or have just agreed to sell the Akash Tirs and the BrahMos to Armenia, and even apparently Greece, and along with 17 other countries have actually expressed interest in India's indigenously developed defense equipments, which is I think brilliant for India. But as far as this complicated relationship again is concerned with Turkey, simply because it's part of NATO, how do you think that, because Turkey will continue to support Pakistan in its in its activities
Yeah,
again?
that's true. Because you have to understand why Turkey is doing that. Uh, if you look at the relationship between Saudi Arabia and UAE, India is having a far more better relationship between Saudi and UAE than what Pakistan enjoys in today's day and age. Now, Turkey is a competitor to Saudi Arabia, and Turkey has its own global ambitions of having an Ottoman Empire back and being the leader of Caliphate, or the Ummah, what we call it as general. So Turkey will compete with Saudi Arabia in Middle East, and Pakistan obviously then makes perfect sense for Turkey to back, because India's relation with Saudi Arabia and UAE are far more better on one point. On the other point, I'm not very sure if Turkey really wants to be a part of NATO anymore. Because if you look the way Turkey is competing with Israel in Syria, it's giving very clear signals that it's a matter of time before Turkey actually quits or will be forced to quit NATO, because Turkey is becoming a problem for the Americans in Middle East as well, because of the Turkey's own assertion of being an independent global power or an independent power in Middle East. So I think antagonizing Israel, antagonizing India is the part of foreign policy of Erdogan, because Erdogan is looking at shifting his power axis from NATO towards China and towards Iran, and towards the other axis. So I think it's a matter of time before Turkey quits NATO or is forced to quit NATO, and that is where his whole support for Pakistan stems from. And obviously, if Turkey has given an open support to Pakistan, the reaction from India has been pretty strong as well. One of their companies lost 10 to 12% of their, 2,000 rupees worth of crores. I don't know how much exactly is that in dollars, but that's the figure we know in Indian currency. Have taken a loss in last 2 days. Most of their infrastructure projects in India are also being put on hold. They have a contract at the airport of managing logistics at the airport, which has been halted as well. So ties between India and Turkey are heading for a freeze for sure. But Turkey going forward, how Erdogan is looking at placing Turkey is something which we have to wait and observe. And will Turkey be forced out of NATO, or will Turkey opt out of NATO, is something which is to be seen as well.
Yes, I mean, I think the entire complexities right now in Asia, because apparently there are now three conflicts. There is the Israel conflict that's going on with Gaza. There is the Russia and the Ukraine, which is, at the Europe-Asia border, and now at the subcontinent. So do you think there is some kind of a semblance between these conflicts, or do you think that, these are all very unilateral matters?
So definitely there are semblance between the conflicts, because the moment the alignments happen of powers between one and another, you will have a semblance of conflicts. And if you look at the way Turkey has been behaving in the Middle East, or whether it wants to meddle into India-Pakistan affairs, it has a clear strategic objective behind these things, and so there is a semblance between them. I don't see them as isolated or unilateral matters. I see a complete semblance when it comes to these conflicts, and the countries who are trying to raise their rates or trying to back each other up. There is a power projection which has been happening from the Western countries as well as from the countries in the Middle East, or from South Asia as well.
I mean, I think I thought so as well. Right. So, Operation Sindoor, we have spoken about the impacts of this as far as Pakistan is concerned. So, I just wanted to also understand from you our Eastern Front, specifically the Bangladesh, Burma, the Chicken Neck. Do you think Operation Sindoor has had any kind of impact as far as our complicated situation on the eastern side of the border, and what do you think, how do you think it might play out? Do you see a conflict arising at the eastern front as well, or it's just media hype?
I wish, honestly, Urmi, I wish that it would have sent a message of deterrence to the east, but I don't see it that way. I think the threats coming from the eastern border of India, whether it is Myanmar or Bangladesh, are far more complex than what comes from Pakistan. A lot of our focus is on the western front, but it is the threat which is building up on the western eastern side of India, which are going to be potentially very, very dangerous in coming couple of years. So I don't think Operation Sindoor is something which would have set up the deterrence with the East. I think that threat from the East is definitely on, and definitely something which we are going to face in coming times.
Do you think there's any steps or any kind of actions that the government of India can take preemptively to ensure that what happened, I mean, it doesn't get into a full scale escalation? I mean, the way things are really hotting up in the east, the eastern front at the border. So do you think there is anything specific that the government of India can do, or what's your analysis on that?
No, definitely, government of India should actively, with other Western countries, talk about getting rid of the illegitimate unionist government in Bangladesh and hold elections. Because holding elections in Bangladesh is in favor of the world and in favor of India as well. You need to have a democratically elected government to deal with it. India has tried dealing with Yunus, but Yunus is, hostility against India is not anything hidden. It's quite an open secret. So I think that is something India really needs to pursue to get elections done in one in Myanmar and two in Bangladesh. Because without elections, I don't see there is much India can do. Any preemptive military action, whether it is limited, is going to go against India largely on the global field because India will be seen as an aggressor and as an interferer. So I don't think India has many options when it comes to dealing with Bangladesh except diplomatically. And diplomatically, India has the heft and the power to deal with Bangladesh and with Myanmar both, and that should be pursued.
Right. So, so coming back to Jammu and Kashmir and Operation Sindoor. So, given that this particular attack has been clearly targeted and religious in nature, do you think it threatens India's secular and diverse social fabric in any way? And could such attacks or violence also influence or radicalize young minds in the Jammu and Kashmir region? Do you think that's a threat that we need to think about and take, action before it becomes a bigger problem?
Yeah, absolutely, because the intent was to create a problem between the fault lines of India. So this does, increases that fault line more because when you are targeting Hindus, especially, you are sending a very, very clear message that what your intentions are when you are doing this kind of an attack. So their intention was, as I mentioned earlier, also to trigger some kind of a communal clash within India. uh, good sense prevailed and nothing of that sort happened. We saw, I would say political magnanimity from the other side as well, from the opposition as well, especially Asadun Uwaisi, the way he came out hitting at that calmed down the tempers a bit. But the risk is always there, and the radicalization of the minds is always there. It is risky in Jammu and Kashmir as well. But by and large, I don't think Pakistan's intention of radicalizing Kashmiris through this incident is going to succeed because there is very less appetite for violence in Kashmir at the moment. The Kashmiris really don't want to indulge into active terrorism or into violence. Obviously, there is a fringe element, and that fringe element will always be there. Irrespective when I speak this. But apart from this fringe, I don't think in the mainstream in Kashmir, the appetite for embracing violence or adopting violence as means for Kashmiris is something which is.
Right. So just this morning, actually, there were also, of course, talks going on for the last couple of days. But just this morning, I think the news came out about a delegation that I think the government of India is about to send to the United Nations and to various other stakeholders to explain Operation Sindoor and also to explain Pakistan's involvement in terrorism. And it has created quite a bit of stir simply because there are a lot of people from the opposition as well. I think the delegation would be headed by Dr. Shashi Tharoor. And there are also talks about OACG being involved in one of the groups, along with a whole host of other people. So how do you think? I don't think that something. I mean, something did happen during the 90s when I think PV Narasimha Rao ji had sent. In fact, Atalji to the United Nations to talk about. So I think after that, an action like this has not really happened. So how do you think this action by the government of India, do you think it will help in busting the narratives and the propaganda? Or do you think it's just, the West is too biased about us? And so how do you think this will play out?
No, I think it's very significant, and you rightly pointed out, Atalji was sent by PV Narasimha Rao to the UN. But I think this is a similar attempt from PM Modi's government to reach out to the world. And, I think there is a lot of diplomatic action which is going to come against Pakistan. So if we want to get them grey-listed on FATF or blacklisted on FATF, you have to get the world together. And there is a very large narrative that it's only the BJP which is anti-Pakistan in India, and the rest of the parties actually align with have a softer approach. So I think this is a message to the world saying that the whole of India is united when it comes to Pakistan, whether the opposition parties or the ruling party, they're all on the same page on how to deal with Pakistan. So I think it's a very good step taken by this government by letting Dr. Shashi Tharoor to lead this delegation advising the world and the UN about Pakistan. But the biases of West are there, and they are going to stay irrespective of the outreach you try to create from India. There is a certain bias, and I expect that certain bias to stay. I don't expect that certain bias to come down. But saying that, even if we are able to change 10 to 20% of that bias, and make it favorable towards us, it's a job well done.
I think I absolutely agree with you. I think it's a brilliant step, and we only have to probably wait and watch what happens. But if there's anyone who can give the West and Western media a run for their money, it's Dr. Tharoor. So I mean, whatever you may call him, but when it comes to communication, I think he's the best man for the job. So well, India has been consistently stating and demonstrating that its strikes were primarily targeted at the terror infrastructure, and post that only the military infrastructures, not really targeted at civilians, which is where the precision, the word precision is I mean, the world is shocked like that how could India carry out strikes with such amazing precision. Yet we've seen, protests by, of course, the Pakistani communities and other anti-India forces in various places in the West, including UK and London, of course. Given that, how do you think an average Pakistani, what is the perception of an average Pakistani as far as this is concerned? I mean, this is a separate discussion by itself, I know, but yeah, I would like to take your opinion on that.
Look, honestly, given the way Pakistan has behaved post the halt of hostility, it has come across as a very delusional country with very delusional people. I have never seen anybody celebrating their own defeat so emphatically the way Pakistanis have. And they always have done this. This is not the first time they're doing this. They celebrated 1971 as a success as well. So I'm not surprised. But look, an average Pakistani, if you go by what we see online or some interaction with them, they're worried as well. They're not ready to buy the government narrative, the Pakistani military narrative, which they have tried to put out of being, victorious in this. They are questioning you. You will see memes, you will see spaces holding where they're, being critical of their own government and their own military and saying what really they have achieved out of it. They've actually been on the receiving end. But saying that, look, I don't expect much from the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis are very, very delusional, extremely delusional. It's a case study for the world, honestly, to study the Pakistani mindset. It's something which baffles me, to be honest.
I like that term, case study. I think that's the right way to describe it. I mean,
Anyway,
so moving on, this is my last question to you, Rajaji. So, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's recent stance on Islamism, including its push for a more moderate Islamic identity and crackdown on extremism. Actually, not just Saudi Arabia, even UAE and Bahrain. A lot of these Middle Eastern countries. So how do you think these shifts may impact or influence countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, we know what they are. So do you think it's going to have any impact, or do you think it's these
30
two?
odd years. That, yeah,
Okay.
30 odd years. No immediate impact is going to happen. I see, sorry, I think I lost my, no, that is just a moment. I don't know what. Okay, 30 odd years is what I would see, because it will take time for the society who has imbibed for the last 70 years political Islam, or can you hear me, Urmi?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you very clearly.
Okay, I thought my
Yeah.
screen went frozen. So from last 70 years, the kind of political Islam, the kind of violent Islam which the Saudis have preached essentially the world, now they're trying to change it. I think it's going to take at least 20 to 30 years before Pakistan or Bangladesh actually, imbibes that kind of change from Saudi Arabia. It's not going to be very quick. It's not going to be very, very easy for them to do so. So that's how I see it, to be very honest.
Right. Thank you so much, Rajaji. Do you have any final thoughts about this whole incident, about Operation Sindoor, about moving forward? Then please share with us, share with our audience before we
But the only
conclude.
thing I would say is that we have been able to set a deterrent cost with Pakistan this time, and it's a welcome step what Indian government has done. And I don't, that doesn't mean it's going to end terrorism from Pakistan. Terrorism from Pakistan is not stop, but the kind of cost we have put on them will make them think 10 times before doing something, and that is why I'm saying that threat from the east is now becoming very dangerous because the Pakistanis will try to come via Bangladesh and try to hit us. So we have to be very cautious. But I think what we have set up is a deterrent which Pakistanis now will find very hard to break, given the economic conditions of Pakistan in general. So I think that is a very welcome step from our government this time, and that should at least some thinking minds in Pakistan really need to think whether everything is, perpetrating against India is worth the cost Pakistan is going to suffer in future. Because I think going forward, this escalation is going to increase the intensity of attack on Pakistan is going to increase. It's not going to decrease.
Thank you so much, Rajaji, for your time today. It has been an absolutely fascinating conversation, and thank you for all your insights and analysis. I'm sure our viewers would absolutely. These are the questions which are there on all of our minds, and thank you so much for the clarity. And I will be in touch, and hopefully we will meet again soon. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so
So,
much.
Niji, thank you so much. Thank you so much.